What is going on, guys? Ricky in the Flip Lab. Today I'm here with my boy, Brandon Arter.
What it do? What's going on, dude?
It was a big week last week in Phoenix, man.
Yeah.
We had the Super Bowl. We had Waste Management Open.
Yeah, it was big for everything but my business. You know what I'm saying?
I felt like all real estate investors didn't do shit last week in Phoenix.
I mean, that's probably true. I was probably one of them. You know.
How many beers do you think you had at the Open?
Well, so you get the wristband or whatever.
Yeah.
And they tell you can have 10, but then half the time that they're not like charging you for it, or they don't like ring.
They're not scanning.
Yeah, it doesn't scan you.
Yeah, your wristband.
And then I don't know, man. It was probably at least 15 every day.
How many days did you go?
Just 2. Yeah, just Tuesday and Thursday. I had buddies that wanted to go on Saturday. I'm just like, can't do it.
Yeah, and then you had the Super Bowl on Sunday.
Super Bowl on Sunday. I had buddies in town, so it was like, just a week of just craziness.
Yeah,
too much.
I'm glad it's over. Back to the grind.
Yeah, I mean, we'll keep it. Well, glad to have you back next year, but I need some time. You know what I'm saying?
100%. So how's the real estate stuff going right now?
Good, man. Good. We're starting to level off. We're probably like most guys that were flipping, in mid last year, just got crushed. In May you could sell a house, and then in June you couldn't. Yeah. Right. And here in the state of Arizona locally. So we got smoked. We had, I want to say it was 16 flips going, when the market turned, which wasn't fun. Most of our price points were, we would buy in that $500,000 to $700,000 range, and then try and, get the ARV like closer to $1 million. And, oh man, we just got smoked. We got smoked on a ton of them.
That was the price range that I felt like really got hurt too.
Yeah.
When the rates started going crazy.
It's the most dangerous price range if you think about it. Cause I mean, like the people who are making those purchases they're higher income earners, right? Cause even if you're buying it close to $1 million, higher income guy or girl. But that's also the first thing to go away. And they're also the first ones that like kind of recognize patterns, right? Where like the lower end stuff, like the rates don't matter quite as much, and like maybe the buyer isn't quite as affluent. They're not going to be so influenced by market trends. Yeah. Right. So yeah, we got crushed on a ton of those. Guarantee we lost over $1 million.
Shit. Well, part of flipping, dude. You know what I mean? It's like I try to I love hearing like real stories like that, and even talking to sellers, because for the longest time, every seller you talk to, like, you greedy flipper, you make all this money. Like, no one ever feels bad though for the flipper that buys a bad deal. No seller's calling you up and they're like, dude, I'm so sorry. I sold you
that money back. Yeah. No, and it's like, then the buyer's getting a smoking deal too, because you just put, however much money into this flip that now they're getting at, not pennies on the dollar at this point, but 90 cents on the dollar or so. But yeah, that to me solidified, like, I feel like any newer, like either wholesaler or flipper, I went through this for sure, and I don't know if other guys went through this. Like, I went through this like a little bit of emotional, like, I got to kind of get my head around what's going on here. Like, when you first start wholesaling or flipping, you do have to buy a house at 65, 70 cents on the dollar. It's just the way it works.
Yeah.
Like, if you want the math to pan out. And there is a way, it's funny, I was just talking to a guy about this. There's a way to look at it like, oh man, that family could probably use that equity, right? Or they could use that extra $50,000 in the sales price of their home. I'm sure they could use it, right? But at the end of the day, if we want this, real estate machine to keep turning, and we want to make these houses like wholesale them, sell them to flippers, and then make them beautiful and sell them to a family, like, the numbers have to be what the numbers have to be, right? And you have to be okay. And I'm so much more okay now, just going like, no, this is my price, and I have to buy at this price to make a great product. And if I can't buy at this price, that's fine, but I'm not buying from you, right? Like, that's just the way it has to work, because at the end of the day, like, stuff got a little crazy for a while, but like, all my contractors are going to make all their money. All my lenders are going to make all their money back. Me and my partner are the only ones that lose money, right? So it's like, listen, that's the game I signed up for. Sure. I'm good with it. But now going forward, like, I got to make sure, like, we got to make sure we're protected too, right?
Yeah.
So,
and I think there's different strategies, right? Like, I always ran in New Jersey the way we flipped. Like, we weren't flipping stuff unless we bought it at 50 cents on the dollar. Yeah. Pretty easy cosmetic stuff, cheaper price range. But we only did like 20 flips last year, netted like $75K on each one. Yeah. So they were like easy.
That's huge though.
Yeah. That's easy, simple deals. But at the same time, like, when the market was good, you guys were going super heavy. You were really aggressive, and you were probably also making like a lot more money during that time as well.
Sometimes. I mean, honestly, like, when we bought, the target was right around the same, like 50 to 75,000 in margin. But the deals we were buying, like I said, like $500,000 to 700,000 was like the entry cost in the deal, and that doesn't include any of the renovation. But if here in the state of Arizona, if I wasn't buying at that price range, like I couldn't make any money. Half of the problem in like 2021, early 2022 was like if you wanted to go buy, 3.2 tile stucco, super simple, and put like 25,000 into it, like you were going to be lucky if you made another 25,000 on top of it. And that's if like the roof was still good, the AC was still good, the plumbing. Like if you ran into any issue at all, you were making no money. It took you 4 months to flip it. And then, you split that with a partner. If you made 10 grand, congratulations, you just make $5,000 and it took you 4 months to make it.
Yeah. And the hedge funds were buying so heavy on all the shit like that.
It was impossible.
Yeah.
So the only way we could solve that problem of making any margin at all is to go buy more expensive stuff where other investors weren't willing to go. Right. So like it made us a ton of money in that time frame, but it cost us. So I think the key for us and probably what we learned was just maybe instead of buying so much at scale, pick the real winners, right? And then buy a little bit less and just make sure you're making that margin, and you can hedge some of the risk that way too.
Yeah. So it's good to see though, man. You're still kicking it.
Still alive, dude.
Still alive.
Dude. We looked death in the face a couple of times, but we're still kicking. I was just having a conversation with a guy before. This is a newer guy trying to get into real estate, and he was kind of asking some of these questions. He was like, he's like, it's crazy that you're like still here and you're still wanting to buy houses. I go, think about it this way. Like we knew a couple guys, I'm sure you knew a couple guys that like, dude, June, July hit and they just hung it up, dude. They went, hey lenders, take the houses back, or however many they had. Hey investors, sorry. Like all this, they just were like, hang it up. And I was like, okay, that's fine. Like if that's where they were, I'm not judging anybody for that. But I go, what's next for that guy? Like, is he going to go, you have to go find a new space? Okay, and if you are going to go find a new space, like I don't know anything I can go do this year and try and go make $1 million.
Yeah.
Maybe like I start a company, but there's like barrier to entry.
Start drop shipping, dude.
Yeah, to drop ship, dude. What are those, the Amazon stores? Yeah, the e-com stores. Even if like, I don't know anything about that. But even if that worked, like there's barrier to entry, one. And then two, like I've got a heavy learning curve to just go figure that out. It's going to take me a year just to go figure it out, right? So like I'm not going to make any money that year. So like it was easier for us just to go like, okay, cut some losses, go work really hard for 6 months and figure all this stuff out, put out a bunch of fires, figure it all out, and then let's go right back into it. Because now, I talked before is like the hedge funds were buying all those tract homes. Well, hedge funds are gone. Right? They're still technically there, but they've always been there, right?
Yeah.
And it makes more sense now for a wholesaler to sell to a flipper.
Or they're buying at like the price that you would buy it at, not at fucking 110% ARV.
Yeah, they're buying at the price I would buy it, but also they're retrading you after that, right? So there's no consistency.
And they suck to work with.
Yeah,
I'd rather sell you a deal every single day of the week
and make
them.
5-10 grand less, but it's guaranteed, and then you get to move on and go to the next deal. Whereas like, yeah, you might make 20 with the hedge fund, but then they also just like may not close it, right? And then you're like stuck with this house, and you got hard earnest. Like there's all kinds of stuff. So yeah, I like this market we're in right now. Like we started buying again actually in October. I had a little bit of purview of kind of what's going to happen with interest rates and inflation and that sort of stuff. I understand those markets decently well, like just well enough to be dangerous. And we started buying again in October, and like all the stuff we started buying in October, like now is like selling like hotcakes, because we can go buy the tract home that needs $25,000 worth of work that a second time or first time home buyer is going to buy.
Yeah, and it's like in that lower price range, if it's on market extra 30 days, that hard money payment isn't killing you.
Oh, yeah.
If like a deal falls out of contract, it's not killing your margins there.
No, and you can go buy like. I can go put $25,000 in renovation in something and expect like $50,000 to $60,000 in profit off of that. Like
not waiting on permits, just in and out, like a couple weeks.
My contractors love it, right? Which is another thing. Like you got a lot of guys that slowed down. A lot of guys were slow on work. Like I can scale out 4 houses that need $25,000 worth of work a lot easier than one house that needs $100,000 worth of work, right? Because that's like one good crew that knows their stuff, right? That's fucking beams and what else do we put? I mean, everything else we've got to do, all the new windows, the roofs, the ACs, all that stuff, which is just so much more cumbersome. And the most of the contractors don't like it.
Yeah.
They don't like the turn times. They don't like any of it.
They want the simple, easy shit, in and out.
And why not?
Get paid.
As they should. So yeah, I don't know about you right now, but it's for me, a way better market to flip in.
Yeah. So, I mean, we were running in New Jersey, even when the market in Jersey where we were flipping, it never got super hot. So we just never got like super aggressive either.
Yeah.
But so we were always slow and steady, just picking off kind of good deals.
Yeah.
So not much has changed over there.
That's good.
Kind of, we a while ago kind of transitioned out of, we had one big renovation flip.
Yeah.
Literally took a year. And it was like a $400K house that we didn't even do anything special with, but just this one city in New Jersey, just permits
and all that stuff.
Yeah, like we had to put a wall back up, and it was all this bullshit.
Sounds fun.
And we ended up making like 30K, and then compared to like a deal we did last week, we bought for 32K, sold for 120, didn't fix it.
That's crazy.
So I'm kind of more on the side of, and we have I have 3 total like employees.
Yeah.
It's just us partners, like pretty low overhead. We just send some mail.
Yeah.
So if we're not doing deals, it's not killing us. So we've always kind of just been on the stay a little patient, pluck off the good ones. And I mean, you make 100K off a flip and you don't have that much overhead. You don't need to do that many to make good money. And
no, you do.
It's not that much stress.
20 of those a year,
honestly.
you got a partner, you're each making $1 million.
Yeah.
Or somewhere close to it.
Right. So I've always kind of dealt with that, but we've been trying to wholesale now in Phoenix. We were killing it with the hedge funds, and then we just like died off when the market turned.
I mean, everybody did.
Right. Like everyone was hurting, but this past 2 weeks, we just locked up like 2 pretty solid deals.
Yeah.
So I'm even seeing just even like sellers are kind of, it's a little easier conversation now than even a few months ago.
Oh yeah. I actually think we're in a bit of a transition right now. I think we're all the stuff I just sold. I had one get like multiple offers, like first day on.
I'm seeing guys saying like 10 offers first day.
Yeah, it's not quite what it was, and definitely like I think a lot of people, especially like, so we're pricing pretty aggressively because I don't want it to sit. I want it to move and go. And if I make $10,000 less, like that's fine because we can roll through our capital more times this year. So it's probably a little bit of that. Probably guys are underpricing stuff a little bit. But yeah, I think especially in the lower price range, like as these rates start to come back down, we lost a little bit last week, but as these rates start to come back down, affordability comes back. Like that was our only hitch, right?
Yeah,
because inventory is still low. I saw a thing yesterday we're like 30% lower than we were in 2019 for inventory.
I was getting concerned when it went from 3,000 to 22,000, but now it's been coming down.
16? I think we're like 16,000 here. Yeah, like greater Maricopa County area. Which, yeah, I mean, I don't even think that's I think we're a little over a 1 month supply. So I think they say healthy is like 3, maybe 4. So I don't know, man. I'm bullish on going in. I'm bullish for, I don't know. I've got a few things going on in my head, right? So I'm bullish because builders are already slowing down. We're already short on houses. We've got, like, from an economic standpoint, all the Gen Z, I think, what are we? No, millennials. Millennials still, because I'm how old are you?
I think I'm 30. I think I'm a millennial technically.
Yeah, I'm a millennial too at 36. So the millennials that took a little bit longer to go start having kids and buy houses and all that stuff are really starting to come into it. And I think, like, from a generational standpoint, like it's a big buying pool coming in while the builders are still slowing down, while for the past, like, since basically 2012, they weren't building enough houses. Pair that with, okay, even if rates come down to, let's call it like high 4s, low 5s, if you have a 2.5% interest rate on your house, you're comfortable, everything works good, and now you've probably spent the last couple of years fixing it up because when rates got really high, you didn't want to move. Like, how incentivized are you to sell that house, right? One, because it's going to cost you more money on the upside, like buying, and then the rate on tacked on top of that. And number two, you got this 2.5% mortgage. Like, you're probably not really very willing to give that up. In fact, you're probably more likely to be like, well, let's keep this as a rental. Maybe it like becomes a legacy home for our kids or whatever. Like, I have a feeling a lot of the inventory is just going to stay tucked away.
Yeah, I mean, even I bought my primary in August of 21, locked in like 3.5%. Since then, like, made some upgrades.
Yeah.
So at this point, like, I don't think the house is appreciated a whole lot after everything that went through. So, like, I really have no incentive to sell it all.
Yeah. And
like, I'm going to chill out there for a while, for sure.
Yeah, and if you ever want to, like, you know, maybe you guys have like 6 kids or whatever, you can go buy like a bigger house. But even then, it's like, well, the rate's so good, the house will cash flow. Like, why would you not just keep it?
I've been talking to a lot of creative guys, and we've even just been talking about like the value in just that debt, how good that debt is.
Yeah.
Like if you have a rate at 2.5% over 30 years,
yeah,
like there's a lot of value in that debt alone outside of the house.
Anything sub 4 is like, it's basically free money. It's like, what is going on, right? So like, I tend to think a lot of those people are going to stay on those houses. Here's one thing I do know about houses and people, because I started out doing mortgages. That's where I cut my teeth. People will always treat their house like their biggest bank account. They always have, and they always will, right? And people are notoriously bad with money, right? So people will take some time to figure out how to ruin the equity position they have it. It just is a natural part of life, but a small percentage, right? Let's call it maybe 10, 15% of people. Those houses will come back. However, the ones that like are in a good position, like there's a pretty good possibility a lot of those houses don't ever come back to market. And then the hedge funds all bought. A lot of people say those market or houses are never coming back to market. I have a feeling that's probably not the case. They were saying BlackRock wrote off like $1.3 trillion in losses last year. So that's a write-off benefit, right? And then now they could go resell those houses and technically call that a profit this year, right? So if they are incentivizing new investors to come invest money with BlackRock, it's a pretty good way to do it.
I've been trying to figure out what all these hedge funds and like I've even learned throughout the years now, it's like this hedge fund actually doesn't even buy. They retrade
all of them.
And I'm like, but I almost think I think like China's just buying up all the houses, dude.
It could be. I remember when this whole thing started, there was like this a couple guys were talking about like Russia, China, like a bunch of like foreign entities like having a lot of stake in the U.S. housing market. I'm like, well, like at what point are we like, at what point does this become like unpatriotic to like sell a house to a hedge fund?
Dude, I like when I was just slinging them to hedge funds, I was like, am I ruining home ownership for the average American for the next 50 years?
But I think the percentage is still relatively low of I think they were originally talking about they were going to own like 30% of houses, but I think it was like, it's like sub 5, right? I don't even think it's 5% of houses they own.
Yeah.
Right. And
it's still pretty low. They were buying, there was a time where I was getting worried, like just in my neighborhood that I like moved into, like the next 4 houses that all sold to hedge funds. So I started seeing like, like if this trend continues, I'm going to have a neighborhood that I don't really like. That's not what you want in your neighborhood. You want a bunch of owners who are going to have families there, not a bunch of renters.
Yeah. And that concerns me because there's no emotion with those guys. That's like, if we want to dump 10,000 houses, we're going to dump 10,000 houses, right? So that concerns me a little bit of if those guys want to go make a profit, right, of everything they wrote off. If they flood the housing market,
inventory go up really fast overnight.
Go up really fast, which means housing prices drop. So that is a little scary. I don't know what those guys are going to do, right? Pair that with the fact of we clearly found a ceiling for prices, especially if I'm speaking just from the Phoenix area. We found a ceiling for prices based on rates, right? So now we're kind of subject to whatever rates are going to do for housing prices, right? Rates go up, housing prices go down. Rates go down, housing prices can go up potentially. And now rates are only going to fluctuate. Most people think that interest rates are like tied to the Fed rate, which indirectly they are. But the biggest contributor to mortgage rates is inflation, right? If they think inflation is going to go up, mortgage rates go up. If they think inflation is going to go down, mortgage rates go down, which is why we're seeing rates starting to get a little bit better because our year-over-year inflation readings, like on a monthly basis, are coming in below where they were in 2021, and they're going to continue to do so as we go into like May and June.
Yeah, and it sounds like the Fed is definitely slowing down rate hikes. Then if they stop or start going the other way, and I think just the average consumer has come to the realization of, hey, if it's 4 or 5%, that's not a bad rate.
No, historically still very low.
For a while, I think people were hoping like rates would get back down in like the 2s and 3s. And now people are past that. They're like, that's probably not coming back.
I don't want that. Like I would love for like a next like 10 years, like a steady market at like 4.5 to 5.5% interest rates, like steady 2-3% growth in housing. That'd be like the best. And I think everyone should want that, right? These like huge ups and downs, these huge swings is like, it's crazy. It's too easy to get caught,
Yeah. And especially just being so dependent on a rate, right? Like what's the rate's going to be? That's a tough spot to be as an investor, just because it's kind of out of your control.
Yeah.
It's not really like math based upon, okay, like supply and demand or this or that. It's like all of a sudden that home buyer a couple weeks ago, they were able to get a 5.1 locked in, and now it's a 7.1.
Yeah.
They're like, no, I'm good.
And the gestational period of a flip, you know, at best, like if you can do it in 90 days, that's pretty quick to flip a house, right? And that's like, you know, get it on market, get it all ready, close it. So a lot can happen in 3 months as far as from a rate perspective. So again, I'm bullish on what's going to happen with rates. I see if you go like look at the CPI ratings of where they were last year as opposed to where they're projected to come out this year, I think they're all going to be lower. There's a few things in housing that are going to help us. But that little thing in the back of my mind of like, what are these hedge funds going to do with all those houses? Like, makes me a little nervous.
Same, dude. I think, I don't know. I think they've made their move as far as like, we're going to do this. And I think they're in it so deep. I'm just not sure if they're going to back out of it, because if they can get to like that 30%, now they truly do control kind of the real estate market at that point. And that's a lot of power in that for these big companies.
They do. I don't know. I go back. I can see both sides. I can see them just holding it, right? I can see them like, well, we already bought the houses. Let's just go make our money, because rents are still high. They've settled down a little bit. Yeah. I think we've even started maybe even seen them come down just a hair, just because we got a little crazy.
And like Gilbert Chandler, I think they've come down like a hair, but they also like doubled in 2 years.
Yeah. So rents are there. They support based on what they bought at. But the other perspective, if you look at it like this, like if I'm the hedge fund and I've got X amount of houses in the Phoenix area, and I know if I put all those houses on the market that I can soften that market and I can get prices to come down, and my target is to go rebuy, there's something there too, right? Again, it's not gonna be emotion they're gonna buy with or sell with. It's gonna be like, how do we make money for our investors? I
kind of thought Zillow was like doing that whole thing and was gonna like try to like just manipulate the market, but it turned out they just sucked at buying houses.
You know what I think it was? I think it was a back end thing for them. Like, think about all the houses they were buying, just like we know, just like to regular, like even to go like buy a house, clean it up and put it on the market, like takes some work, dude. It's not like you don't just literally go put it back on the market. Like you gotta go see the house, you gotta do this, and something happens, and then it's sitting and
take care of the landscape
or the leak. Yeah, it's like all these things happen. Like at the scale they were buying at, it's not surprising to me that it was hard to like keep up with the back end of the inventory. So I'm not sure if that's exactly what happened to those guys, but you know, not only that, but you miss on the market fluctuations. It's so easy to.
They were buying just like really bad deals too that were obvious. Like they bought a house 2 houses down from me, and I just knew it's like the day they bought it and I saw the price, I was like, they're going to lose money on this house.
It's crazy.
They use like my house as a comp, and it's like completely different. like I could tell like that's what the underwriter was sitting there like, oh, well, that house sold, but it's like it wasn't a comp.
Yeah.
But I just think they weren't very good at doing real estate there for a while.
Yeah, I don't know what's going to happen with that, because they're going to make a run at it again at some point, right? It's not like that model's dead. They just got to get it better.
I think Zillow and I think Opendoor, did they like partner up?
I don't even know. I
saw something like that, and I was like, wow, 2 shitty iBuyers are going to come together. And
yeah, dude, throw an OfferPad. You got a real mix here in the Valley, dude. Right. It should be really good.
So this whole time, though, you've really been just flipping houses, right? Not too much wholesale, not too much creative, or...
That's how we started. So actually, if we were rewinding the tape, so I left lending in 2019. I was really bad at it. I'm such a people pleaser at heart that when things go south in lending, they go south quick. Like as soon as you tell someone they're not getting a house, it's like everybody's like crying and yelling, and you know, not only that, like the home buyer, but then the seller's pissed off. The seller's agent's pissed off because they're no longer getting a commission. The buyer's agent's pissed off because they're no longer getting a commission. They're the ones that probably brought you the client. Yeah. So then there's this whole like looming, like waiting for the shoe to drop, like if you're not going to send me clients anymore. I hated all of that. So I left in 2019, and I started initially trying to wholesale. So like I hired a couple cold caller, or I hired one cold caller, and I was texting all day. You could still do like texting. I've heard, we don't do any direct to seller marketing anymore, but I've heard like texting is it all but dead, or can you still text?
We still text. It's gotten so much more regulated with a lot of the platforms. So like you literally can't say like sell, buy house. So you have to like put this like encrypted message. Like, do you have a hut that you might consider giving away for a price?
A place. Do you have a place you would like to not, whatever.
Yeah. So it still works, but it's gotten worse, and regulations just seem to keep getting added to it.
To be fair, as they should, right? Like I get the text messages too, right? And if I've got stuff going on, or I get the phone call,
it's annoying. Like, hey, text is how becoming like email. Like when email first came out, like you read all your email, you only got emails from like important people. Yeah. And then that got to a bunch of junk.
Yeah. Now my main job is just to sort through like what's important and what isn't. Yeah. Right. So.
And then texting, right? Like you never got a random text for a while there. But now it's, whether it's political shit, just random businesses.
Yeah, if we could rewind like 10 years and start texting people like off the jump, it would have been like your response rate would have been through the roof. Like you almost probably wouldn't be able to keep up. If you
Everyone thought it was unethical though. You know?
Yeah. I'm going to text somebody. Yeah. So no, we didn't ever do any of that. So when I got into wholesaling, I was texting and did it. It wasn't working out. It turns out the same reasons I was bad at lending. I was actually a decent lender. I did a good job, and I was able to scale it up. Turns out the same reasons I hated lending were the same reasons I hated wholesaling. It kind of was the same thing. I just wasn't relying on anyone to bring me the business. I was direct to consumer. But I didn't like it. I didn't enjoy it at all. And so I hired a coach, and we were kind of working through like where I was at mentally with all this stuff. And I had done 1 or 2 flips at the time, which I enjoyed it. And she was like, well, why don't you flip more? And I'm like, even at that point, even though I had flipped homes, I had done it, sold it, made a profit. My brain was still like, you can't flip houses. That's like for people on TV. You know what I'm saying? I legitimately thought that. And she was like, well, that's crazy to think that, because there are people out there that flip houses for a living. And I'm like, you're right, there are. So as soon as we were like, all right, cut bait on the wholesale, we went from flipping 1 house at a time to 18 months later, we had 20 projects we were working on that we had scaled into. And again, we were buying at like $500,000. You know, our typical renovation budget was somewhere around $100,000.
How did it feel going from like having no debt to having, sounds like millions of dollars
at one
worth
point
of
we
debt,
were
right?
like $10 million in debt. Yeah. I felt like, was that Kanye? He was like, I'm $30 million in debt. I'm like, I'm almost Kanye, dude. It felt good, dude, without Yeezys. You know, when you're in it, like it doesn't feel, you know what I'm saying? Like you're just like, whoa, it kind of feels like before we weren't here, but now we're here, but it feels like you got there for a reason. You kind of skip back and look at it like, all right, that's a lot, you know, but at the end of the day, if you're looking at, if we're buying good deals and they're all selling at a good price, you know, plus I've always looked at it, I've told a couple people this recently, like double bankruptcy doesn't exist, right? Like it's one bankruptcy. Like if I have to go to bankruptcy, like would I rather have $1 million bankruptcy or a $10 million bankruptcy?
That is true.
I'd rather have the 10, right? Yeah. Is it more headache, a little bit more stress? Sure. But like if I can't pay back the $2 million, like, and I can't pay back the 10, to me, what's the difference, right? Not that I was like making moves that were going to like put me in a place to where I'd have to like go to that. But if things that are out of my control were going to happen, like,
you always have to run through worst case scenario as an investor.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess you're kind of running. It's like, yeah, let's have the worst case be.
It would suck either way.
Yeah.
It would suck either way. And at one point it's just numbers on a piece of paper and numbers on a screen, right? Because if I can't pay it back, I can't pay it back. So that was kind of always my thought process, which allowed us to scale to where we did. But, you know, after going through the turn, you know, it taught us some stuff about like the amount of reserves and should we be chasing every deal? Because once you scale to that point in flipping, and I know a few guys that have into this and like, maybe this is something I just needed to learn and kind of grow through is, you know, at some point you're kind of robbing Peter to pay Paul on a lot of these deals. Like you're like, well, this one hasn't sold yet, but this one did, and then roll the money in. So it's always like there's money like around in the ether, but it's never just like, oh, we have all this excess money just sitting around that I have to like just
right.
take and go buy a house in Cabo. Like that's not how it works, right? It's always like there's this new deal always. So.
Yeah, or even we run into, do we continue paying like the hard money lender, or do we just like use our own cash for that? But then it's like, when do you ever pay yourself? And it's almost like this like revolving thing of like, oh man, we're making a lot of money, but when you actually look at like how much you just like completely taken out of the business to keep to yourself, sometimes it's not the same.
No, it's not. And people was like, oh, you must be making so much money. I'm like, yeah, technically on paper we were making a ton of money, but it's like also, you know, how much money do you really need to live?
Yeah,
right. You don't need $40,000 a month to live. Right now, would I like to get to a point where my company's scaled enough to where I'm getting, you know, a net $40,000 a month, you know, making like, what was that, $4.8 million a year? Of course. Fucking cool. Or no, that's not 4. It's only 480. Yeah. So $500,000 a year. That's, you know, that's good. That's like
that's all. When I ran the number, that's all I need. I know you got some kitties and stuff.
Yeah, but they don't cost $500,000. You know what I'm saying? Like you could survive at 250 really easily. Yeah. Like that's like you're ordering guac at Chipotle at that point. You know what I'm saying? You don't think twice. Right?
Yeah.
So
you're living in a nice house. Yeah. I mean, it might not.
If you're making $500,000 a year, you can travel and
do whatever the fuck you want.
Yeah. So that's kind of what we learned is like, all right, like we don't need coming back to like, we don't need every deal. We need the right ones. And let's just hit our, you know, 20 to 24 flips a year averaging $50,000. That's $1 million. And if you can wholesale a few houses in between there, great. It's all gravy, right? And then keep some here and there. Like that's kind of thing where we're
Do you have some rentals right now?
We had a few Airbnbs, which we sold. We listed like in the spring, which was a good time to list them. We ran through this thing in the spring where Airbnb, or at least this is what I understand. We had a girl that was running them for us. It was my sister-in-law. But Airbnb at one point had kind of throttled back all of their listings. So like they took the visibility for most people and they like brought it way back so no one could find you. And what was happening is like you went from having bookings every weekend to like only like half the amount of bookings. So the natural response from everybody was to drop their nightly cost, which I think was the target for them. I think they kind of saw this inflation happening with the prices, and they're like, we got to slow this down. Let's throttle everybody
People
back.
Started going, you know what, man, I'll just book the hotel.
Yeah. Well, yeah, at some point, like it's expensive and there's no food in this place. So once I saw that, I was like, I don't have a lot of control over how that's going to happen. I really didn't like that, and we listed it. We have one that we just finished in Tempe. It's like right in the Maple and Ash neighborhood. I mean, just probably some of the best real estate in Tempe. And it's pretty small, and we got into it for a decent price. So we'll keep that one just because every time I go there, I'm like, I don't want to sell this place. Just there's something about it. But yeah, I don't know if we'll just put someone in it or what. But I'm staying away from Airbnbs. And then the new target now is like, all right, what's the up and out? Do we Zach Keeps it and go buy 400 single family homes? Do we move into multifamily? So, it's 400 in one place. Like, I don't know, right? That's kind of the next is like, well, we can't just keep flipping and wholesaling for eternity, because if we don't start buying and holding assets,
you're only as good as your last deal, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of the times, like I've been in that same boat too. This past year, we bought 9 rentals, me and my partner.
Okay.
And we bird them all with DSCR loans. So we left like no money into them, which is
good.
cool.
Yeah.
But
is that Jersey?
Yeah. That's out in Jersey, but I don't think like my partner, he's like a Russian Jew in Jersey, East Coast type of like, he's going to die with these like Section 8 type shitty rentals. And he's just like in the hood every day and
just loves it.
He loves it. So that's not really like a long-term thing for me. Like I don't want to do that. We bought some rentals together. So I'm trying to figure out too, like what I want. Like you mentioned Keeps, like shout out to him. He's a machine.
Dude, it's crazy. It's wild that he has all those rentals and it's just like...
But I can't, like, I'm not as Zach Keeps though, personally. So I don't look at that and I'm like, okay, I'm going to go out and achieve that. Like, I just wouldn't want that.
No.
So then I start thinking like, same thing, Airbnbs, a lot of regulations, all these rules.
And honestly, a little bit of a nightmare to run.
Yeah.
I thought it was going to be a little
running
smoother.
like a hotel.
Yeah, I thought it was going to be a little smoother. We had someone like full-time running and I'm still found myself very involved in them. And I'm just like, I can't, like this is...
Yeah, so it's not passive at that point. So I've been like thinking about, like I was talking to Eric Sage last week, and he's a big like note holder. So like
super smart guy.
Yeah, very smart.
Yeah.
I had to do a lot of math after our podcast, trying to figure out like going through some of the deals.
I think I saw that clip. He was talking about guys buying on hard money, putting seconds on, reselling the first position, right? And then just keeping the cash flow.
That little juice. So it would be like a deal. Let's say, you buy for $100,000 and you could get an end buyer at like 175 on, a wrap who can't go to a bank. You create a note at like, 70% LTV, sell off the first. And then like if whatever's left over for that second, like 30 to 50K or whatever number it is, you're just sitting in that position collecting, let's say $400 or $500 of interest a month, and you have no skin in the game. Yeah. Because like you didn't even have to put that initial funds, or
it's just a note. Somebody else owns the first.
You don't owe money to anyone.
Yeah.
At that point,
are you second lien position? So if they foreclose, you're probably getting smoked on that deal.
Probably getting smoked. But
you're not. You're
you don't have anything into it,
nothing
right?
in it. And I think his argument was, as opposed to just wholesaling it, like why would you not do that, right?
Yeah, and you make some now money too with down payments and possibly when you go and sell that note off, there could be a little extra
little
squeeze.
Margin there. Yeah. So if you can make $5,000 on the note, you can make $10,000 on the down payment. There's your 15, which you would have probably only made that wholesaling anyways. But now you've got that $500 a month in juice
for like 10 years.
For like 10 years. So even if it does get smoked, it's like, who cares? Like ideally you've got 50 other ones.
Yeah. And you're literally, I mean, that's like passive income.
I heard that and I was working through that in my head. So one of the things we're starting right now. So one of the things that kind of hamstringed us, even going through the growth phase for us, was hard money lenders, right? So, we've always wanted to figure out like kind of you know, what's the workaround on that? And it sounds like that might be a really easy way to do that, is to like bring in the hard money lenders, but then sell off the back end. So you're not really like, you're not choked down with that debt, because that's what it'll end up getting you. But it's just like passing off to somebody else.
Yeah. Even for me, I mean, just with private money lenders and stuff, I don't love owing a bunch of people money.
Well, you can, at one point we had like our hard money payments were like $65,000 a month. I mean, it's crazy, right? It's so crazy. And if like a few houses don't sell, it's not that the houses don't even have the value. It's not that the equity is not there. It's just like from a cash flow perspective, it's an absolute nightmare. So just the reserves you got to have just to be able to make sure you can float 6 months of payments is crazy.
Yeah. I mean, even with like rentals, like in Jersey, all the like property tax on all these properties are like $4,000 to $7,000 a year. So even just that quarterly property tax that you have to pay, like people don't realize that sometimes with even like rentals. You have 100 rentals. I mean, you have a big property tax bill every single quarter that you have to pay. And
that could be $400,000 a year, right?
Yeah.
That's a ton. That's a big nut.
Yeah. So I think it's tough though. There's no easy way to passive income that I think new investors are hoping they find. Or they hope they find this like crazy strategy to it.
No, it's low and slow.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard to do it fast, right? So like, I think that's one of the lessons we learned is we were trying to do everything really, really fast. We were trying to be aggressive and kind of get ahead of it and like make that plane take off really quickly. Whereas that might not have been the best strategy. Like we made some money. Here's where it did benefit us is we learned a ton. I got a master's degree in flipping houses in 2 years, right? Just because like the market was just doing this. It wasn't anything special we did.
Yeah.
Did we put in the work? Sure. Did we get a little bit aggressive? Did we take some risks? Yes, all those things were on us, but the market was doing what the market was going to do.
It was hard to lose there for a little while.
It was real hard to lose. I mean, we're talking, you could list a house first day, have 20 offers. Like that's crazy. You know, it's not the way it's supposed to be. So yeah, so, you know, now we'll take that information, we'll come into this new market, whatever this new market might be, and do our best with it.
Yeah, I think too, I was like head down, hey, if it's working, like keep going. When people were talking about, oh, you should like sub 2 and creative wraps and all this shit, I'm like, no, I'm making my 100K on flips, I'm good.
Yeah.
But I think we've entered a market now, and like as it slowed down, I have been like much more like, hey, we should evaluate a deal from like all angles.
Yeah.
And take our time and not just like take the easy way. Oh, fuck it, let's just make a quick 30K. Like, how could we really take this we found a really good deal. Now let's try to really make the most out of it.
Optimize it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it is. So there's two sides of that coin, right? There's something to be said for like, we do what we do and we do it well. Like Chick-fil-A, right? Like they do chicken, right? In-N-Out, they do burgers. They don't do chicken. So there is something to be said of like, do something good and do it well, but also like be a little bit more flexible on the back end of like, yeah, we could create some additional strategies. We could sub 2, we could seller finance, we could wrap, we could do whatever. So I think there's a balance to that. And I think that comes back to like being aggressive and trying to do everything too much at once. It's like, okay, once you've got your wholesale operation and you've got your flip operation kind of squared away and the numbers are good, the margins are good, like you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, like your SOPs, like, okay, now we can kind of venture into that space of like, you know, onesie, twosies here and there of like all the creative stuff. Because at the end of the day, like it does take some time to go do that, right? Like if I had to go sell a note today, I got to go figure out how to sell a note. I got to go figure out who to sell it to. I got to go talk to, I would imagine, attorneys on selling it, right? So like that's some time I got to take and go figure all that stuff out. It's not saying that time's a bad investment, but it's like if my attention is being pulled in these other spaces in my wholesale business or my flip business, like it's gonna be tough for me to like really go focus on that and do it. So I think you have to be like scaled out.
Yeah, even just evaluating deals. Like I'll show you this one that we got under contract and I underwrote it as like a wholesale flip, creative. And, you know, just underwriting it the creative way, like with the 2 notes and stuff, you know, that took an extra 20 minutes compared to just like.
Now scale that out. Now do that 10 times a day.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. That takes a lot more time too. And then especially it's a lot of the times it's like people are trying to have you underwrite something creative that isn't like an obvious, it doesn't work as an obvious wholesale.
Yeah.
So then you're also looking at some shitty deals. So you could get bogged down that way. So I think an investor always has to be very mindful of, where am I spending my time?
Yeah.
What am I good at? Where do I have a competitive advantage over my competition even?
Yeah. And that's one of the challenges for us. So we don't do we did a little bit, like started in the spring. I spent a bunch of money on like building out like this wholesale business. And then like, now it's like non-existent. Stuff happens. But now all of our marketing now we do on the MLS. So we brought on a guy last year as a brand new agent. Okay, just got his license. Like came into my office. He hung it with Subbing Group, which is Temps company.
Yeah,
who they handled all the agency side of the stuff for me because I don't know. I'm not an agent, so I don't know the rules. Like I don't know what you can. I know like the basics of like how to keep yourself out of trouble because my wife's licensed and I spend enough time around agents. But you know, I don't know like how to do I don't know how to do where to get a Benzer or like, you know, I know
just do all that technical shit.
But I don't know that, right? So they took care of all that stuff on the back end, and we were able to bring him in on the front end, and just off MLS deals, like in the last 12 months, he's made over $100,000 as a brand new agent, right? Which is like crazy.
Yeah. It's amazing.
I know agents that in their first year, they did one deal on Teams, right? Of like somebody like, hey, here's how you do this. Like
pretty much like spoon fed some deals.
Yeah. Well, it's probably spoon fed a little bit of leads, but like, hey, here's like, go work these open houses, do all this. And like, I mean, in their first year, one deal, right? So, which is not that crazy considering like you're starting from scratch, no clientele, like you have to learn all this stuff. So it's not that crazy of an idea. So I always, when I talk to guys like you that are doing the direct to seller marketing, like there are so many more options for you guys to like to look at a deal from that perspective. Whereas like if I'm going to do something on the MLS, like yes, technically we could pitch seller finance if they own it outright, but a lot of times our stuff's just a little bit more cut and dry, which I'm okay with it. Like if I see a deal come across my plate, like if you're like, hey, we found this sub 2 deal, whatever, I could probably just as soon buy that deal as opposed to focusing on the marketing, which is where we're at now. Like we've got a spot now where we've got 2 spaces that we're going to bring on. We just have 2 spaces. I don't have room for anybody else, but we're going to bring on 2 more guys that we're going to kind of replicate that model and bring on, you know, the goal is to get those guys immediately to $100,000 a month or $100,000 a year, whether they've been doing deals or not. So,
yeah. Have you found like, I know me, last year I was scaling out kind of the business, having all these acquisitions guys, and then the market turned, a bunch of them left. Some of them, like I learned a lesson last year of like, trying to figure out the balance between if you bring a guy on, showing them like exactly what you do versus like trying to kind of hold back and just be like, no, dude, like you just do this. Don't worry about the rest.
So, I mean, I go both ways with that, right? So like one, I could go both ways. So like one, if I teach somebody how to make $100,000 in their first year, which we can easily do, it's not just what they're doing. It's all like the back end I kind of already have in place, right? So like if you look at it from like all your flips and stuff, like in New Jersey, like if you brought on an agent in New Jersey, right, or somebody just like to help you source deals, and they're selling directly to you, or they've got you as kind of the back end of like, hey, they can truly underwrite everything, or they can commit to deals and drop earnest, or they know the other buyers. It's going to be really hard for that person to leave and go replicate that system because you've spent years building the back end of that business for essentially the disposition of the deal, which is the hardest part, right? Like, yeah, an agent can go like just write today and go write 10 offers on the MLS, but they have nothing to do with it. If they have no place to put that deal, it's gonna be really hard to monetize and make money, right? So I don't ever really get concerned about that because the back end for us, we have so many options of what we can do with the deal, whether we buy and hold it, we flip it, we wholesale it. You know, we know enough guys in the industry like you or Temp or the Imans or whoever, that we could just immediately go to and be like, hey, what do you think about this? Like, can you commit on the deal? Right. Whereas it's hard as a new agent to be able to just do all that stuff. Yeah,
I agree. I think flipping operations is much harder. I think I struggled, we were running just a wholesaling business also. Yeah. And I think the wholesaling business they saw, and it was, I just showed them everything.
Yeah.
And then they were like, well,
you could go replicate that.
We don't really need, we don't really need Ricky here.
Yeah. That part I could see to do it. I think the best advice I've ever heard on that is like a lot of those guys, you got to trap them with money. Like you got to like make sure they're making a ton of money. And then you have to have on the back end, again, the backside of your business has to be built out in a way to where now you're like, okay, now you're making all this money. Like we're going to help you go get into these deals with us. Right. So like, we're going to start holding rentals and guess what? You're going to have a piece of this pie. Right. And then they can see that long-term vision of like, well, it's not just this $100,000 or $200,000 or $300,000 a year I'm making. Like I'm building true wealth with these guys. And I think people can fall in line with that and starts to see a longer term vision. And once you start to get trapped in that, like you're going to have guys for life, right? If you're teaching someone like, hey, I'm going to change your grandkid's life, it's hard to leave that, right? Yeah, you can go do it on your own. And there are guys that are industrious enough that they're just never, like I was one of those guys, I'm sure you're one of those guys, like I was never going to work for anybody for forever. It just wasn't on the plate for me.
Yeah,
but there are the guys that will. There's comfort in having some of that leadership around. And there's guys that just, they want that, they crave that
Yeah.
comfort.
Some people are just, they want to be able to go in, do a really good job, be a part of something, be able to put in impact, but not at the end of the day be the
that's this world takes all kinds of kinds. Like I wish sometimes I wasn't like, I got to do this for myself because it's so stressful, right?
Yeah.
It's so
like,
stressful.
is it really worth it?
Yeah. But I can understand both sides of that, man. And we world takes everybody. I mean, we have to have somebody working at McDonald's, right? If I'm trying to get that McFlurry, I got to have somebody making it, right? I'm not going to go back and make that McFlurry myself. So I don't ever, when it comes to that sort of stuff, like there's no judgment with me, man. If you want to go be your own, you want to be the next Zuckerberg, go do it. You want to like work for somebody and be consistent for the next 30 years and retire, like more power to you.
Yeah. If you're like brand new trying to get into the real estate industry, what do you think is the best route? Like, is it go work for someone? Is it get right into flipping? Is it start wholesaling? What would you say?
Wholesaling is if you from a barrier to entry standpoint, wholesaling is a pretty easy one to go do because there's so many things you could do. Like originally it was like you could go drive for dollars, right? Like if you got a Honda Civic, you could spend $30 in gas, and that's probably going to get you a few days of driving for dollars if you kind of know what you're looking for and you're diligent enough and you've got the follow up. You could probably pretty quickly go make $10,000 a month, which is, dude, that's like engineers start out making that, and they went to college for how many years?
I always said if things went south, I would just get in my car and just like, I feel like I could always figure out a way to make 10K a year, literally just knocking doors.
And now with technology, like you can literally digitally drive for dollars. Like you don't even have to leave. Yeah. Like you could be at your parents' house on their Wi-Fi, on an iPad or on your phone, and like finding houses, and like you just have to be diligent enough with that. So wholesaling is always, I think, a really good way, especially if you are okay on the phones. Or decent at marketing, and even if you're not okay on the phone, just link up with somebody that is. Flipping will be a little tougher if you've got some access to some capital. I mean, that's where if I had to go start over again, I'd probably flip again.
Yeah,
I just enjoy the process so much more. But it is tough. Like if you're even going to go buy, like if you're here in the Valley, I mean, cheapest house you're going to find, like you could find some like maybe South Phoenix, Maryvale stuff that's like in the 175 range, right?
Yeah.
You're getting pretty beat down at that point. Like you got to know what you're doing as far as the renovation. So even with that, let's say you found a lender at 90% LTV, you're bringing in basically $20,000 in closing, maybe 25 with closing cost. And then you're going to need at least another 25 to renovate it. So there's 50. And you got to hold the hard money payments in between, plus like insurance and utilities. I mean, you're probably going to need $75,000. So
yeah,
and that's the cheapest houses we have here. So, maybe if you're in another state or you can do it cheaper, you might know more than me on that.
Yeah. I think in Jersey, what's cool is like when we first started flipping, our average purchase price was under 175.
Yeah,
all in cost was typically like under 250.
Okay.
So all of a sudden, like we were able to find private money lenders that had like a couple $100,000. So all of a sudden, if you have like just $500,000 of private money, we could fund 2 or 3 flips at a time just with that. Compared to out here, you need like over double that.
Oh yeah, and if you can get some of those guys, like if you can, have them trust you or show them the numbers and be the deal guy, and you bring the deals, and you're always like, well, these are like good deals, and they can trust you. And maybe there's like some sort of deferred interest, or maybe they're just sharing on the back end of the deal. That'd be probably the best way to get to it. Like if you had access to $300,000 and you're like, I can go buy this house, I can renovate, I can do it. You can come see it, touch it, feel it, Mr. Investor. But just don't charge me till the end. That'd be a really easy way to go do that. Like I'll be the operator, you be the financial backing, and then we'll have to like partner in some aspect. That'd be the way you could probably get started and flip it pretty easy. And if you were going to do that, just stay local, stay what you know. Like literally, if you could buy in your own neighborhood or like wherever you grew up, buy there, because you're going to know like, this is the bad street, this is the good street. Here we've got all this stuff coming around. Here's what's changed since I was, I've been here.
Right.
Like, is there stuff coming in, or are there businesses that are going vacant? Right. So like you're going to know kind of like the macroeconomics of that neighborhood just from being around it.
Yeah, totally. I think too, it's like stick to something easy that's hard to fuck up. Like your first flip should be you actually buy like a good deal. It doesn't need that much work.
Like easy, like buying a neighborhood where all the houses are the same. You don't need to be doing crazy. It doesn't need to be like super expensive flooring. Try and make sure the roof is good. The AC is good. Like if you guys are buying Jersey, you guys have like subfloors out there, right? Like
everything has basements. Everything's 100 years old.
Yeah. So that gets pretty complicated pretty quick. Like you could miss easy, right? Whereas like here in Arizona, like everything's on a slab, right? Like it's big poured concrete. Like you could you can navigate that fairly easy just from a construction standpoint. But I mean, then you start to get into like, well, who's going to do the work? And that from even 2019 going forward was really tough. Whereas right now you can find some guys that are looking for some work. It's a little easier.
Yeah. Even I think a lot of new people that get into it and want to flip, they're like, how am I going to finance it? How am I going to find good people to actually do the work?
Yeah.
So when you were pivoting into fuck wholesaling, I just want to flip, how did you figure out those two components as far as finding the money and then finding, contractors to do the work?
So the money I actually thought was the easiest part. The money came from mostly just like posting on Instagram. We were posting like all of our projects, like like the stuff people want to know about flipping houses. It's an interesting, it's an interesting process, and I can see why they enjoy it, because like you take this like ugly thing and you make it beautiful, and everybody lives in a house, right? So it's something they can easily relate to if they wish they could do this or whatever. Plus, like, how many flipping TV shows are on TV, right? And they probably will always be, because it's an interesting thing to watch. So we would post kind of our journey throughout these houses. You would make a little bit of money, post that settlement statement or whatever, and people see like it's real, right? There's the proofs in the pudding. So we had a bunch of people that would just reach out and be like, hey, how can I get involved? I want to flip houses, or I want to do this, or I want to do that. And our first response was, well, we don't have any room right now to bring anybody on like in the business, but like, if you've got some capital that you wanted to put into it, you could be in these deals from a financial aspect. So we're able to go raise like $1.5 million in funding pretty quickly, which would get you pretty far, because our acquisition was always 100% financing on the front, and then we were 100% financing all of our renovations. So on $1.5 million, that's 10 deals at $150,000 in renovation. Like you're up there now. And if you could go double that money on every single deal, 10 deals, you're going to sell like 3 deals a month. You're making you could make potentially $450,000 a month, right? It never pans out exactly like that. Yeah, right. But like those were the numbers that we kind of thought about. The contractor portion was tougher. We knew a few guys that had some guys that had some experience, right? So like, so we were able to just, once we were able to bring those guys in and we worked with those guys good, we paid them on time. We obviously made the prices competitive, but we were never like hounding those guys on price a ton. Like if I had enough room in a deal to where I was going to make a bunch of money, I was always okay with like, I'm okay with this guy who makes an extra $5,000-10,000.
Yeah, you're not going to beat up your
I was always okay with it, because I was like, as long as he's making money, he's never going to want to go anywhere else. The other thing that we did that was a little bit different than some people is, one, when the pandemic hit, I had 2 little kids, and for me to stay at home and work was just not an option. So I was like, well, we need a space. So we actually went and rented an office space, and you've seen it. It's got a warehouse in the back.
Yeah, it's good. It's a dope little setup over there.
Yeah, cool little spot. And the cool part was like when the pandemic hit and we started having all these issues with just like supply chain issues, we were able to kind of get ahead of it and go, oh, we see this writing on the wall with like, at one point it was baseboards. You couldn't get baseboards, which is like, how stupid is that you have this, almost $1 million house that's everything's done except for like a $2,000 component of the house, which like you have to have in order to sell it, because no one's going to buy a house without baseboards. I go, we can't have a house sitting that costs us $6,000-7,000 a month for $2,000 worth of something, right? So we were able to go like, okay, who has baseboards? How much can we buy? Let's buy it and just warehouse it so that we don't have to run into those issues. But we did that with like mirrors and sinks and all that stuff, so that we didn't have the logistics issues that some of the other guys had, which saved us.
You had like a Home Depot back there.
I mean, it still is. It's crazy. Yeah. I mean, I don't even want to think about how much product's back there. But yeah, I think that's one of the things that kind of saved us. But even if you don't have that option, I mean, now supply chain issues are kind of bad. They're pretty much alleviated. You run some stuff here and there. Windows are always kind of a pain in the butt. But now you can just you can go find all the stuff on Amazon, just ship it directly to the house if you want it. So it's an easy way to go about it.
Yeah. It's interesting. It's a lot of people, they think like you need, it's impossible to find money. It's impossible to find good workers.
Money's the easiest part.
Yeah. I always say like we did the same exact thing that you did.
Yeah.
Just pretty much got loud on a few like wholesale deals. People ask questions. They ask too many questions where they realize they don't want to do all the work.
No.
But they got some cash.
They do have some cash. And what I started to realize is, it's hard. Let's say you had like $10 million, like just sitting, well, you need to find a place to put it. And if like, you're not going to go like traditional, like go put it in some money market account or some, whatever whatever fund that's going to invest your money, well, you're probably going to get like an 8% return. Well, if you can get north of like 12%, like that's 50% better on your money. And it's hard to go find a place to go do that. And people are willing to take that risk. And even after like that downturn, like I said, like all of our lenders are making all their money back. It may have taken us a little bit longer than it would have before, but they're making all their money plus their returns. If that money would have been in the stock market, they would have lost 30 to 40% of that money guaranteed. And some of that money might not come back, right? Like if it sits
for sure, yeah.
Maybe in the next decade it comes back and works its way back. But like, yeah, you had to wait a little bit longer, but you made a way higher percentage of return. So, us having that actually helps us to go raise more capital. Like I can be like, hey, look at all my lenders that have paid back like during the worst downturn we've seen in the last decade, right? Everybody made their money.
Yeah,
trustworthy guy like me.
It was one of our private investors, my dad, and he's like an older guy. He doesn't have that much money, but he's like, dude, put my money to work. I need like places to park it. And when the stock market was going crazy, he was almost looking like, well, dude, maybe I'll just go buy some more Tesla instead of lending on deals.
But now
he's like, where's you got another deal coming? I was like, Dad, eventually, but like. Yeah. I'm smart with your money. Don't want to lose it. So
yeah, but when the shit hit the fan, man, it got scary for a little bit. I had some meetings with some close friends that I trusted that were already doing what I was doing and were a little bit ahead of me. And we kind of had to like at one point it was like pick a direction. Like, do we call an attorney and like look at bankruptcy, or do we just like go work through like fight through these problems? Because you don't know if you've never been through that before. Man, it's scary. Like you're like, I don't know what we're gonna do. We got to go figure it out. So what surprised me is like immediately as soon as things start to go south. Did you watch the, who's the Ponzi scheme guy? Bernie Madoff. Did you watch the Netflix one?
I didn't watch the Netflix one, but under my assumption is like, if 08 never happened, he would have just like been fine.
The crazy part is he started out like a regular investor with good returns. But what happened was he made a couple bad moves, or like the market moved negatively, and he just wasn't willing to share the flaws. He wasn't willing to go like, oh, like this happened, it was bad, Mr. and Mrs. Investor, like here's what we're going to do to fix it. He just wasn't willing to admit that. So he started forging things that made the returns look good. And then people were like, well, how are you doing this in this environment when everybody else is losing money, right? So it's like, and then he gained more. Well, you gain more capital, you got to keep returning and doing that thing. And then he got to this point where his returns were so good, his fake returns were so good that he was basically like, if anybody asked any questions, just like, well, why don't you just take your money back and go away? And the returns were so good, like we don't want it, right? So that's how he was able to hide that for so long. So it's funny because like 4 months ago, somebody asked me like, "Do you see that new Bernie Madoff?" And I'm like, I don't want to watch it because I feel like I'm the Bernie Madoff of real estate right now, which of course was an exaggeration, but like it was like scary to watch. But then when I watched it, I realized like that was the issue. So when everything sort of hit the fan for us, the first thing we did was call our investors. I was like, hey, come in. We're going to go over everything together because like it takes a village to make sure like everything's on track. And to our surprise, all but one who like as soon as I'm done with him, I'm like, I'll never talk to him again. I will tell everyone not to use him. If you want to know who not to use in lending, go ahead and DM me. I'll tell you. Everybody was so supportive. Or like the 2 out of the 3 were so supportive and like, what can we do to help? And the first question they asked me, what the first question was? Well, are you going to keep using more money? That was the first thing I'm like, are you crazy?
That's surprising. Yeah, right.
I'm like, what?
Are you sure about that?
Yeah. I'm like, I don't want to borrow any money right now. But they were right because there's two things it's a symbiotic relationship, right? Like they need to lend money to make money. I need to borrow money to make money. So like that symbiosis, is that the word? Symbiosis? Yeah. Like that still exists and it couldn't have been more true. And a lot of those guys, they had been through it before. So that's what was kind of like, hey, you're fine. You're going to need more money, right? And I'm like, I guess, dude, I guess we're borrowing more money. So that was one of the parts I didn't expect of when things went south. If you've got good lenders and good partners and you're honest, it's crazy how much it helps just to share what's going on. And they were able to even offer some advice like, hey, do this here or do this here. And it saved us. It saved us for sure. So,
yeah. Do you think that's just having lenders like that do you think that's one of the biggest reasons why you were able to get it out of this pretty good? When I saw other, like you said, a lot of other flippers that were as heavy as you guys were, like a lot of them sounded like it ended a lot worse for them.
Yeah, I know some guys that are like in the same boat as us, and still, it's funny because every time I talk to the guys that I feel like are kind of on, I don't know, levels or whatever, same level as us, we're all basically still going through the same thing. We've still got like, we got a couple burners left. Like we have like 3 or 4 houses left that we're losing money on, but from a revenue standpoint, like we might even bring 10 grand to the table. So we still have a few of those houses, but since we started buying again in October, I have new revenue coming in, which is where like I think the guys that got smoked, if they never started rebuying, it's really tough because like you have to bring in revenue to keep the business going. And if you're not buying houses as a flip company, like where's the revenue coming from? So yeah, there were some guys. Yeah, the lenders saved us, and then like I said, I've got a little bit of an understanding of how the markets work, and I'm able to read that a little bit deeper. And when there were a couple gurus out there, I'm not going to say anyone's names, that were screaming from the rooftops that rates are going to 10. I'm like, the whole time I'm like, no, they're not. No, they're not. They're actually going to do the exact opposite, and they are. They're doing the exact opposite of what I said. So being able to be like, okay, let's navigate this, because if they would have gone to 10, I think we were smoked. I don't think we would have made it. If I wouldn't have been able to go rebuy and sell houses, I just don't think we would have made it, which is what a lot of guys I talked to, like the main difference between like this and 08. I talked to a lot of big boys, and they were like, this was different than 08 because it happened so fast. It was like I said, May you could sell a house, June you couldn't, right? Whereas like 08 was kind of a slower bleed, but it took forever. Like it took
years. When I look back at it, I'm like, holy shit, that crash. We always,
it was like a 2-year deal.
It was like a 2 year.
So that makes it even worse, because like you're catching a falling knife, because you're buying on the way down, and every time you go rebuy, and then it's worse, and then it's worse, and you're like, you can't get out of it.
Yeah.
Right. Whereas like you almost needed to like cut the head off the snake and just wait. Whereas this, it was really, the houses that we bought are now profitable again in October. It was really June to where the really problems really started. So that was a 4-month period of like solve problems, maybe try and wholesale a few if you could, and then just essentially wait. Whereas like that 2-year mark would have crushed us.
Yeah. Like we weren't making a whole lot of money there for like 4 months, but
there was nothing to do. I was like, I can't sell a house.
I was cool with it too, but yeah. I was also thinking, I was like, this can't go on for 2 years.
No.
So it was kind of like, I don't think this is going to be that long. But do you feel like we are on like the back up and up in Phoenix at least, or do you think it just kind of depends on the rates?
As rates continue to come down, affordability is our only main issue. Inventory is still low. I think we're going to be good there. There's a couple of like main points that are going to come in Fed meetings. A big one's going to be May 10th. So market calendars May 10th. When is this released? Is it pretty quick? Or?
Tomorrow.
Okay, yeah. So market calendars for May 10th. We're going to have some good inflation data that's going to come through. That's really going to be pivotal for rates, but we should continue. We lost a bunch last week, but we should continue to kind of get that stuff back. Again, the only thing that makes me nervous is like, I just don't know what those hedge funds are going to do. Like, are they going to sell those houses to try and turn a profit this year? If they do, that might be a little troublesome depending on how they do it. But other than that, I'm bullish.
Yeah, it's been interesting talking to them too. Like that they've kind of been on the sidelines. Like some of the funds have dropped off a bunch of staff, but a lot of them, like, dude, they still have staff. They didn't drop everyone off.
Yeah.
And it sounds like even a lot of acquisition staff.
Yeah,
that's just kind of like they're waiting on the sideline. So it'll be interesting. But
I've heard stories of like Q2, Q3 that they're going to start buying again. And I don't really know. I know a couple guys that have sold a couple of deals to them, but it's not like it was before, right? I mean, they're buying the same price as we are. So again, I don't know. I can only look at what's directly in front of me, and I can't navigate to be honest. As a flip company, at the end of the day, like, flip company going to do what flip company going to do. We got to buy houses. So
got to buy houses. Love hearing it though, because I think even from me, like I'm wholesaling out here, like it's good to see a lot of the flippers. They're looking for deals again.
Yeah. Oh, in the last few weeks, picked up a ton. Yeah. I mean, we've gotten bid out on a couple of houses. Like, I'm like, well, these are good deals, and then like we miss it. They're like $10,000-$20,000 above us. I'm actually nervous that I'm gonna have to start like buying more expensive deals again. Like, dang it, dude! We just got to flip all these like easy houses, and now I'm like, I gotta go probably buy more expensive stuff.
Yeah.
Is what it is.
I'll try to find you some cheap track homes.
Love it, dude. Yeah. Send us all your deals. We commit, we drop earnest, we buy it. We may resell it sometimes, but we're always honest, or at least we close it.
Yeah, I have a pretty local like Phoenix AZ following. So like if people want to reach out to you, send you deals, is Instagram the best way? Or?
Yeah, it's just Instagram. So it's at Brandon Arter. So BrandonArter. You can DM me. Sometimes they go to like that, like whatever
request.
Yeah,
or whatever
request inbox.
Yeah.
I'm not, and I'll be honest, I'm not the best on Instagram. Otherwise, I'll just give you my phone number. It's 480-274-4637. Feel free to text me over anything you got. I'm terrible email too. Actually, I'm just starting to realize I'm really hard to get a hold of. Yeah, text me or call me if you guys have deals you want to put on. We're also, again, we're looking for 2 agents right now to put in our office to plug in. Only 2. I can't take any more than that just because we're tight. You see my office.
Yeah.
The office part isn't that big. We're tight on space.
Yep.
But yeah, we're gonna take 2 guys this year, and we're gonna take them even in a down market. We're gonna take them to 6 figures each. I'm excited for it.
Yeah, dude, I love it. Love hearing your, you made it through the storm and you're buying again.
Dude, I'm not gonna say we're bulletproof, but hey, we didn't die.
Yeah.
We didn't die. It's kind of empowering if you think about it. Do you feel the same way of like, you know what? We went through something that wasn't great. I know it wasn't 08, but
Yeah. I'm happy that also, and probably you as well, like when things were really, really good, sure, I like bought myself a nice house, went on some nice trips, but
yeah.
I wasn't going crazy. And I always kept like a lot of like cash reserves when a lot of people were, bro, buy crypto, fuck cash, like buy Tesla stock and Bitcoin, like you can't lose. And I'm happy I didn't feed into that urge and was like, you know what, I'll just keep some cash, because then when times got slow, I'm like, dude, I'm fine. I
get the guys that were hedging, because like if you like, let's say you just had like a salary job where you're making $200,000 a year and like you need a place to put that cash. I get why somebody would put that into crypto or whatever, because you need to make those returns. But for me, we were already so risk heavy on all of our stuff that we were doing. I'm like, I need the opposite. And so like I was okay with cash. I was very okay with cash.
I knew, a rainy day might come and the market might turn and I might not do deals.
I knew it was coming. I just didn't know when. Right. I wish I was better at timing it.
Yeah, dude. So. But happy we made it through, and I'm excited about this year, man. So thanks for coming on the pod.
Hey, man, I appreciate you having me, dude.